Brandon is an educator as well. So he is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania's business school, which is Wharton. And as I said before, that's one of the best business schools in the country. So aside from being a football player, aside from being a real estate investor, aside from working on Wall Street, we even talk about him working on Wall Street, he also, it's too much to talk about, but he's also a educator. So financial literacy is something that we're very passionate about. Can you talk about your class? Because your class is interesting. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's called Inequity and Empowerment in Urban Financial Literacy. That's the name of it?
Yep.
So that's an interesting title. And I kind of assume I know what that means, but can you talk about the class? We'll start off the conversation with the class.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, technically it's not in Wharton. It's in the urban studies school, just to put that out there so they don't come down and, you know what I'm saying? But it's, when I thought of the class, I thought about, I was actually on a ride through Detroit looking at real estate opportunities with a couple players, and one of the players mentioned in the backseat about, hey man, I just wish when I was in college we had a class on that, you know, talked about taxes and budgeting and houses and buying your house and all that type of stuff. I'm like, I mean, that's not just something that athletes need, that's something that we all need, right? Like, how do you just, and you had the conversation, I was like, how do you just pick athletes who you think are going to the league or not, you know, like everybody should have that. So from there, my wheels started running. And again, like, as I said, I'm impulsive. When I get passionate about something, it's like, how do you make it happen? So, it's been a few years of trying to get the school to buy in. And I was fortunate to come across my co-professor, Dr. Brian Peterson, last year at our just college 5-year reunion. I told him about the idea, and then he took it and ran with it and dealt with the school, pitch, you know. You know me, I'm just a creative. So, you know, I come to you with the idea and like, yada, I'm willing to put the work in behind it, but I didn't know you need a syllabus, you need a course outline and all that stuff. So anyway, for me, the class premise is like, let's talk about all the different things that you deal with in life that let's just talk about them, right? For some reason, we've gone through these schools and gone through I've gone through 16 years of school myself, and no one ever taught me how to buy my first house, right? No one ever taught me about the cost of renting or how to invest, right? We have these classes that talk about finance and statistics and all that stuff.
Supply and demand and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like, what's the real life application, you know? And I remember as an intern on Wall Street, I was like, you know, we had these classes, and I think, you know, I had these econ classes and finance classes, and I'm like, okay, I should be pretty well prepared compared to a student who hasn't had this stuff. But then when I went into it, I'm like, yeah, we didn't talk about any of the stuff I'm seeing on a daily basis.
The funny thing about that is, like, I feel the same way about education. Like, we went to school, right, and we had to take all these tests and pass them to be certified. And I went to grad school for it, and I got put in New York City, and all the things that they taught, out the window. Yeah. You're going to learn right now.
Right.
Like, today's your day.
Right.
You know what I mean? And one of the lessons I try to tell up and coming teachers is like, listen, you're going to be tested every day. You got to really put the mindset that today I'm going to win this battle. Yeah. Because I know I'm fighting for them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, that's crazy. Like, you're doing that in finance too. It's the same thing. Like, wait, I went to school for all this and I know nothing.
Yeah. I literally have to start over. Right. And so, you know, taking that is like literally the premise of the class. I nicknamed it Life 101. And so we talk about credit. I always felt like too, like I sat in these classrooms and, you know, as a kid from Baltimore learning and all that type of stuff, I've been fortunate enough. My parents valued education, so I really valued it myself. And still, even though I feel like I'm a bright individual, I would sit in some of these classes and I would have to, like, the teachers would just talk over my head for however long the lecture was. And I was like, people would throw around terms, good debt versus bad debt and all that stuff. And you feel afraid to ask a question like, I don't want to seem like the stupid.
Yeah, because you feel like everybody else must know.
Right, right. Like he's talking like maybe I didn't get this in my high school or something, right? And then, so I'd end up YouTubing it or figuring it out on my own or just through life and experience. And I'm like, it shouldn't be like that, right? Like you paying all this money to go to school. We should talk about this. You should feel comfortable asking this question. So that's the class. We started it. We cover everything from, like I said, investing, budgeting, taxes, your gross pay versus your net, how to buy a house. Our very last class, we had we called it Financing Your Dream Company, an entrepreneurship panel. We end up having my goal, as I tell the students, my goal is to make this financial information, financial literacy, all that type of stuff, is to make this information accessible to all for free.
Yeah.
And so this class was really a pilot and just a launching point to build and to figure out what works and all of that type of stuff. But what we did, our second to last class, we had a bunch of high school students from Philly come in, and then my students taught those students we had 5 different topics, but taught them this stuff. And one, the reason for that was me. One, it's not that I don't care about grades, but I don't care about grades. But 2, it's more of like, I feel like if you can teach someone how to teach, not how to teach. I wanted to teach them how to teach this information to other people.
That's the true sign that they learned.
Yeah. So like, I want you to be able to share this information with your cousin, your family, your mother, your sister, your brother, and spread this information in a similar way that I'm doing it to my family. Give your family access to change their own lives, right? As opposed to, sadly, what we do in society is we get information and now it's my information. And now I'm gonna get a leg up on you, where it's like, you're not my competition, right?
Right.
So we had our students teach it to high school students, because one, I figured if you can break it down on a high school level, then you probably have a pretty good understanding of it. But 2, it also just is giving us that ripple effect as a classroom. And when I tell you, you got one of the biggest things that schools or people push back on is, oh man, people already know this information, and you like, no, we don't. When did I learn it? When did you teach it to me? Right? Like, if nobody ever taught me, I told this to the students as well. If nobody ever taught you, if I ask you what 2 + 2 is, you're like, man, that's a stupid question, right? You've learned that. If I ask you like, okay, well, how do you buy your first house? Right? Like, what do you need? Well, you probably need if I ask you what's a 401k, right? Well, and some people might be like, well, you should know that. Well, how?
Exactly.
Like, who taught me?
And that's something that, because I post videos sometimes of me teaching, and it's always a couple comments like, well, financial literacy shouldn't be taught in school. We shouldn't rely on schools. People should be teaching at home. True, of course. But if your parents aren't prepared to teach you, then what about those kids?
Yeah.
And that's the vast majority of kids, right?
Yeah,
so it's like to say,
much.
okay, well, yeah, of course, everything should be taught at home. But if that's the case, what's the point of even going to school?
Yeah.
So we just teach our kids everything at home.
Like,
you know what I mean?
working in the education system, right? This is like my 17th year in education. But that was part of the reason when I saw Shadi, I'm like, look, I need your help. Like, you're a financial advisor. I need your help. Like, I know that these kids aren't learning. And I felt like I was doing a disservice. So I'm like, all right, well, I have 6 weeks to help these kids, right? And I was like, listen, I need your help. Come in and just teach these kids these lessons. Yeah. And it was like, when we started seeing the return on it every year, it was like, oh, this is amazing, right? So like, being in the system and knowing it's a disservice, like, we got to give back. So like, you going back to Philly to take kids, like, that's dope, right? And you're doing it at the college level, right? And our program is, from high school kids getting ready for college, but also this year we're launching one for elementary school kids, right? Because the earlier they get the knowledge, now their parents can learn, and these kids are learning, so they're prepared. By the time we get to high school, they're going to be advanced, right? So we're just trying to start earlier and earlier, right? And we need more people doing that, right? So that's what drew me for sure. Like 5:30 in the morning, I'm reading, I'm like, oh, I got to meet this guy, because he's on the same path, and I thought that was dope. And
then also, my next line of question leads right into as far as giving back. Right? We spoke about that off camera a little bit. Can you talk about that as far as like the importance of that and why? Because a lot of times people don't, like you said, I read a book one time that we operate from an attitude of scarcity instead of abundance, meaning that it's like, okay, if me and you from the same neighborhood, you make it to the league, I'm going to be depressed because I'm like, the percentage of somebody making it is like 1 out of 100. Now you made it, so now my percentage is like,
I'm done.
I can't make it. Statistically, it's like, instead of saying like, yo, I'm going to use you as an example that I can make it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we look at that and it carries over from a lot of things like, okay, I got $1 million. I can't teach somebody else how to make $1 million because I've already beat the odds. Right. So I can't diminish my odds by trying to spread the wealth. Like, you know what I mean? So
it's sad. So yeah, my wife and I, we started this foundation called Beyond the Basics Inc. This is it right here. We throw football camps. We take kids on shopping sprees for Christmas, feed single parents, Thanksgiving. I think that, that's just our heart and what we feel called to do. And that's actually like the best part of everything that I do, I feel like. When you talk about giving back, I shared this with the students as well. I share this with people. I think that there's a lot of people in this world. This is the way I think of my life. And whether I'm right, wrong, and whatever I'm doing, I'm sharing it. And I'm letting you know that, hey, like, I don't have all the answers. Like I told my students that the first day, I don't have all the answers, right? Like there's experts for all of this information. That's the reason why you hire an accountant. That's the reason why you hire an advisor, a financial advisor. That's the reason why you hire a credit repair specialist to handle these different tranches of your life. The reason why you hire a realtor. Like, I don't have all this information, but I will get the people in front of you. I have a little bit about all this stuff, and anything I don't know, we'll learn it on the fly, right? That's cool with me. I'll take that humble approach to teaching and to being a vessel. But what I always tell people is there's people who write these tell-all books, 50-some years old, right? This is how I amassed my wealth and all that type of stuff, right? And there's a bunch of young kids who's reading that, well, I just read such and such book, and, now I'm going to try to do it like this and this and this, right? Which is great. You're sharing that wealth of knowledge. I always think that the person who wrote the book, the author's peers at that age group are probably looking at this dude like, a dude or woman like, why didn't you just share this stuff while you were doing it? Yeah. Right? Like,
you could have brought us all with you.
Why didn't you tell me while you were taking these risks? So that now we can all be writing our tell-all books. We can all be on these yachts. We can all be on this stuff, right? And that's what I'm like, all right, like, let's just share as we go, right? Yeah. And for me, it's about taking a humble approach or making the information humble in the sense of like, it's not overwhelming. It's not like, there's certain things that are complex, more complex than others, but all of this stuff is once you take some time and dive into it, you're just like, what? This is, this can be easy. Yeah. And I think that sadly, a lot of people trying to teach or a lot of people trying to, and we're not even talking about specifically giving back, but I look at the professor stuff as one of my versions of giving back.
No,
sure, it absolutely is.
That's education.
And a lot of people trying to teach or give information, they want you to think that what they do is rocket science.
You know why? How we can tell is giving back? Because you're doing it, right? Those kids are being inspired, and you'll never know the impact, right? But there are a bunch of athletes who are looking at you like, wow. Like, I could do that. I wish I could do that, right? And they're reaching out. Like, when we posted you, like, a bunch of athletes were like, hey.
Well, we have a lot of, shout out to the NFL. Yeah. For some reason, I don't know, but like, half of the NFL follows us, right? On my page. So we're getting more basketball players. Shout out to Al Harrington. Shout out to a couple other league guys in the league. But I'm proud of the NFL guys because they're really taking financial literacy serious. Yeah. And they,
I don't think it's a coincidence.
No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. And what you said was key as far as to make the information understandable to the people. And I think that's one of the driving forces behind our podcast is that people don't really want to read Barron's. And even I don't really want to read Barron's. I'm going to fall asleep when I'm reading it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, but the information that we deliver, they know that it's like a conversation they can have in a barbershop. Mm-hmm. But these conversations aren't being had at the barbershop.
Right.
So now they can tune in once a week and they can check it out. And and the good thing about our platform is that everybody that we are bringing in are from different walks of life, different areas, but the one common denominator is that they all are willing to share time and give out free game. And that's what you just did. And it's commendable.